They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but our family's Instagram feed was worth about 3 lies and a restraining order. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let me back up to when I still believed in happy endings and thought my biggest problem was whether Ethan would remember to pack his Nintendo charger for Disney World. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Jeff Turner, and I'm a paramedic in Boston. 36 years old, decent looking if you squint, and dumb enough to think that 10 years of marriage meant something. I've seen plenty of car wrecks in my line of work, but nothing prepared me for the slow-motion collision that was my marriage to Melissa. Melissa Turner, soon to be Melissa something else if I had my way, was what people called a girlboss. She ran marketing campaigns for tech startups, drove a white BMW, and had the kind of smile that could sell ice to Eskimos or convince a husband that working late 3 nights a week was totally normal for someone in client relations. "Jeff, you're being paranoid again," she'd say, not looking up from her phone as she tapped out messages at 11 p.m. "This is what ambitious people do. Maybe if you had more drive, you'd understand." Drive, right. Because saving lives for $48,000 a year apparently showed a lack of ambition compared to convincing people they needed another productivity app. Our son Ethan was 7, all elbows and curiosity, with my dark hair and Melissa's sharp intelligence. He was the one good thing we'd managed to create together, and watching him get excited about our upcoming Disney trip was the only thing keeping me sane. "Dad, do you think Mickey Mouse is taller than you?" Ethan asked over breakfast, syrup dripping from his waffle onto his Spider-Man pajamas. "Probably not, buddy, but don't tell him I said that." Melissa breezed through the kitchen in her workout clothes, grabbing a protein shake from the fridge. "I need to leave early today. That conference call with the West Coast team got moved up." "Again?" I kept my voice neutral, but something cold settled in my stomach. "What about Ethan's parent-teacher conference this afternoon?" "You can handle it. Mrs. Peterson loves you anyway." She kissed the top of Ethan's head without breaking stride. "Besides, you're better at the school stuff." Better at the school stuff. Translation: I actually showed up. I watched her BMW pull out of the driveway and tried to shake off the feeling that something was wrong. Melissa had always been career-focused, but lately it felt like she was running towards something instead of just being ambitious. Late nights, weekend strategy sessions, and a sudden interest in yoga classes that apparently didn't allow phones because she never answered when I called. The parent-teacher conference went well. Mrs. Peterson praised Ethan's reading level and his kindness to other kids. "He talks about you a lot, Mr. Turner. The camping trips, the science experiments. You're raising a good boy." "We both are," I said automatically. Mrs. Peterson's smile became careful, professional. "Of course. Please tell Mrs. Turner I said hello." That evening, I tried to tell Melissa about the conference, but she was buried in her laptop, frowning at spreadsheets. "That's nice, honey. Can we talk about this later? I'm putting together a presentation for tomorrow." "Sure." I settled next to Ethan on the couch, helping him with a jigsaw puzzle. "Hey, Mel, the Disney trip is next week. Should we start packing?" "Already handled. I've got our fast passes set up and the hotel confirmation printed." She didn't look up. "Although I might need to take a few work calls while we're there. This new client is very demanding." Of course she did. Even Mickey Mouse had to compete with Melissa's career. That night, after Ethan was asleep, I found myself scrolling through our credit card statements online. I told myself I was just checking our budget for the trip, but really, I was looking for something. Some proof of the distance I felt growing between us. What I found was worse than I expected. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel spa in downtown Boston, on a day when Melissa claimed she was at an all-day strategy session. Lingerie from Victoria's Secret, charged 2 weeks ago. I hadn't seen any new lingerie. My hands shook as I scrolled through 3 months of statements. The pattern was clear once I knew to look for it. Expensive lunches always on Wednesdays, parking fees near the financial district, a jewelry store charge for $400. I wasn't wearing any new jewelry. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to Melissa's breathing from upstairs. Even in sleep, she seemed to be pulling away from me. The smart thing would have been to confront her directly. Ask questions, demand answers, try to work things out like adults. But I'd been a paramedic for 12 years, and I'd learned to trust my instincts about when someone was beyond saving. Instead, I started paying attention. I noticed how she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, how she'd started buying new clothes and wearing perfume to work, how she'd suddenly developed strong opinions about restaurants in parts of town she claimed never to visit. The breaking point came 3 days before our Disney trip. I was loading the dishwasher when Melissa's phone buzzed on the counter. She was upstairs getting Ethan ready for bed, and the message preview lit up the screen. Can't wait for Miami. 3 days of just us. The sender was listed as L. Work. Miami. We were supposed to be going to Disney World. In Florida, sure, but definitely not Miami. I stood there holding a coffee mug, feeling like someone had just told me the sky was green. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my future, all of it rearranged itself in the space of a heartbeat. Upstairs, I could hear Melissa reading Ethan a bedtime story, her voice warm and loving. The same voice that had been lying to me for months. I put the mug in the dishwasher very carefully and closed the door. Then I went upstairs and kissed my son goodnight, just like always. Dad, are you excited about Disney World? Ethan asked, his arms wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. More than you know, buddy. And I was. Because I was starting to realize that this trip was going to change everything. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and lay in bed watching Melissa sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent even, with her blonde hair spread across the pillow and her face relaxed. It was hard to reconcile this woman with the stranger who was apparently planning a secret trip to Miami with someone named L. Work. I'd spent half the night thinking about that text message, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a work trip she hadn't mentioned yet. Maybe L was a female colleague and the emoji was just friendly. Maybe I was losing my mind. But paramedics don't last long if they ignore obvious symptoms, and my marriage was showing all the signs of something terminal. Melissa stirred as I got out of bed. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Excited about the trip, I guess. She smiled, and for a moment, it looked genuine. Ethan's going to love it. He's been talking about Space Mountain for weeks. Yeah, he has. I paused at the bedroom door. Hey, Mel, that work thing you mentioned. Are you going to have to take a lot of calls during the trip? Something flickered across her face, too quick to interpret. Probably not. I'm trying to keep it to a minimum. Good. It'll be nice to have some family time. I went downstairs and started coffee, my mind racing. If she was planning to leave for Miami instead of Disney World, when was she going to tell me? The night before? The morning of? Or was she just planning to disappear and leave me to figure it out? My phone buzzed with a text from Sam Rodriguez, my partner at work. You still on for that beer tonight? Need to complain about my dating life. I typed back quickly. Can't tonight, family stuff. But maybe you can help me with something else. You still dating that private investigator? Lisa? Yeah, why? You finally ready to admit your marriage is in trouble? Sam had been telling me for months that something was off about Melissa's behavior. He'd seen her at restaurants with men who weren't me, noticed how she'd started dressing differently, picked up on the way she talked about me like I was an inconvenience rather than a husband. Maybe. Can you get me her number? Already texting it to you. And Jeff? I'm sorry, man. I was hoping I was wrong. I stared at the number for a long time before calling. Lisa Chen had a no-nonsense voice and a rate of $200 a day plus expenses. She could start immediately. What exactly do you need to know? She asked. Everything. Where she goes, who she sees, what she's really doing during those late nights at work. How long has this been going on? I don't know. I just started paying attention. There was a pause. Mr. Turner, in my experience, by the time someone calls me, they already know what they're going to find. They just need proof. She was right, of course. I already knew Melissa was cheating. I already knew our marriage was over. I just needed to understand the scope of the betrayal before I decided what to do about it. The rest of the day crawled by. I went to work, ran calls, saved a few lives, and pretended everything was normal. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, expecting either a text from Lisa or another message meant for Melissa's lover. That evening, Melissa was in an unusually good mood. She helped Ethan pack his suitcase for Disney World, laughing at his insistence on bringing 7 different action figures in case Mickey Mouse wants to play. We should probably pack light, she said, folding his tiny t-shirts. The weather's going to be beautiful. How do you know what the weather's going to be like? I asked casually. I checked the forecast, high 70s, partly cloudy, perfect for the parks. I nodded, but something nagged at me. Later, after Ethan was in bed, I checked the weather myself. Orlando was expecting rain all week, with temperatures in the 60s. But Miami? Miami was going to be in the 70s and partly cloudy. She wasn't even bothering to keep her lies straight anymore. My phone rang around 10 p.m. Lisa Chen, already earning her fee. I've got preliminary information, she said. Your wife had lunch today at Morton's Steakhouse with a man named Lance Brennan. 39 years old, divorced, owns a consulting firm downtown. They seemed very comfortable with each other. How comfortable? Holding hands across the table, he paid for a $300 lunch, and she kissed him goodbye in the parking lot. I sat down heavily on the couch. Hearing it confirmed was somehow worse than just suspecting it. There's more, Lisa continued. I followed him after lunch. He went to a travel agency and picked up what looked like airline tickets. Then he stopped at a jewelry store. What kind of jewelry store? The kind that sells engagement rings. The room spun slightly. Engagement rings? I'm sorry, Mr. Turner. I'll have a full report for you tomorrow, but I thought you should know tonight, especially since you mentioned a family trip coming up. After she hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. Upstairs, Melissa was probably texting Lance, making final plans for their romantic getaway. Meanwhile, I was supposed to take our son to Disney World alone and somehow explain why Mommy couldn't come. Except, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to be the abandoned husband, scrambling to make excuses for his cheating wife. I wasn't going to be the guy who pretended everything was fine while his marriage imploded in public. I was going to be something else entirely. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Divorce lawyers in Massachusetts, child custody laws, community property statutes. By the time I went to bed, I had 17 browser tabs open and the beginnings of a plan. Melissa was already asleep, curled up on her side of the bed like nothing had changed. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember the last time she'd said she loved me without it sounding like a reflex. Tomorrow was Thursday. Our flight to Orlando was supposed to leave Saturday morning at 8 a.m., but Melissa's flight to Miami was probably around the same time. I wondered if she was planning to wait until we got to the airport to break the news, or if she was just going to disappear and leave me to figure it out. Either way, she was in for a surprise. Because I wasn't the same man I'd been a week ago. That Jeff Turner would have begged, pleaded, tried to save a marriage that was already over. This Jeff Turner was going to do something different. This Jeff Turner was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person Melissa really was. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. Melissa was already in the shower when I woke up, humming something I didn't recognize. She sounded happy, excited even. Of course she did. She thought she was about to start a new life with Lance Brennan while I stayed home playing the role of the clueless husband. Lisa Chen called while I was making breakfast. I've got the full report, she said. Do you want it over the phone or should we meet? Phone's fine. Ethan's still asleep. Your wife and Lance Brennan have been having an affair for approximately 4 months. They meet regularly at the Marriott downtown, always on Wednesday afternoons. He's been paying for everything: meals, hotels, gifts. Yesterday, he picked up 2 first-class tickets to Miami, departing tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. My hand tightened on the phone. 30 minutes before our flight to Orlando. There's something else. I managed to get some photos of them together yesterday. They're explicit. How explicit? Kissing in his car, his hand under her shirt. Nothing pornographic, but definitely evidence of an intimate relationship. I closed my eyes. Email everything to me. Photos, receipts, timeline, everything. Mr. Turner, I have to ask, what are you planning to do with this information? I'm going to use it. After she hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and opened her email on my phone. The photos were worse than I'd expected, not because they were graphic, but because Melissa looked genuinely happy in them. Happier than I'd seen her in years. She was laughing in one shot, her head thrown back, Lance's hand on her cheek. She'd never looked at me like that. Dad, are you okay? I looked up to find Ethan standing in the doorway, still in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. I'm fine, buddy. Just checking some work stuff. Is Mom still coming to Disney World with us? The question hit me like a punch to the chest. Why would you ask that? He shrugged, suddenly looking older than his 7 years. She's been different lately, like she's thinking about other stuff all the time. Kids see everything. Even when we think we're protecting them, they know when something's wrong. Come here, I said, pulling him onto my lap. Whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. You know that, right? He nodded against my chest. I know, Dad. You always take care of me. That's when I made my decision. Not just about the divorce, not just about exposing Melissa's affair, but about everything that came next. Ethan deserved better than parents who lived a lie. He deserved better than a mother who could abandon her family for a midlife crisis and a man with a Porsche. He deserved a father who fought for him. Melissa came downstairs 20 minutes later, dressed for work in a black suit that I now realized was probably new. She kissed Ethan's forehead and grabbed her coffee mug. I'll be home early tonight, she said. We should probably pack and get to bed early. Big day tomorrow. Yeah, I said. Big day. She paused at the door. Jeff, are you excited about the trip? I looked at her carefully, this woman I'd loved for 10 years, this stranger who was planning to destroy our family. More than you know. After she left, I called in sick to work and spent the day making preparations. First stop, a lawyer's office downtown. Margaret Pike was a family law attorney with silver hair and a reputation for being ruthless in custody cases. Her office was decorated with photos of children, her clients' kids, I assumed, the ones she'd helped protect. Mr. Turner, she said after I'd laid out the whole story, you have excellent documentation, the affair, the planned abandonment, the pattern of deception. In Massachusetts, this gives you significant advantages in both divorce and custody proceedings. I want full custody of Ethan. Based on what you've shown me, that's very achievable. A mother who abandons her child for a romantic getaway demonstrates a clear lack of judgment regarding the child's best interests. What about the house, our assets? Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, but adultery can affect the division of property, especially when marital funds were used to support the affair. She leaned forward. I have to ask, are you sure you want to proceed this aggressively? Sometimes these situations can be resolved more amicably. She was going to let me take our son to the airport tomorrow and then just not show up. She was going to let me stand there with a 7-year-old trying to explain why Mommy decided to go somewhere else instead. Margaret's expression hardened. I see. In that case, let's make sure she faces the full consequences of that choice. I signed a retainer agreement and left her office feeling like I'd just loaded a weapon. Now I needed to decide when and how to use it. That evening, Melissa was in full performance mode. She helped Ethan pack his carry-on bag, double-checked our flight information, and even suggested we watch a Disney movie together as a family. "This is going to be such a great trip," she said, settling next to me on the couch with Ethan between us. "Just the three of us. No distractions." "No distractions," I agreed. "That'll be nice for a change." If she caught the edge in my voice, she didn't show it. We watched The Lion King, and when Simba's father died, Ethan leaned against me and whispered, "You're not going anywhere, right, Dad?" "Never," I whispered back, and meant it. After Ethan went to bed, Melissa and I finished packing in our bedroom. She was humming again, folding sundresses and bikinis that I now realized weren't meant for Disney World. "You seem happy," I said. "I am. I think this trip is exactly what our family needs." I watched her pack lingerie that I'd never seen before, paid for with our credit card for another man's benefit. "Melissa, can I ask you something?" "Sure." She didn't look up from the suitcase. "Do you love me?" Now she looked up, startled. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. Do you love me?" She sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking tired. "Jeff, we've been married for 10 years. We have a son together. Of course I love you." "That's not what I asked." For a moment, something real flickered across her face. Something that might have been guilt or sadness or even relief at the chance to tell the truth. But then she smiled, the same bright, empty smile she'd been giving me for months. "You're being silly. Of course I love you. Now come to bed. We have an early flight." I lay awake next to her for hours, listening to her breathe and planning exactly how tomorrow was going to unfold. She thought she was so clever, so careful in her deception. She had no idea that I knew about Lance, about Miami, about any of it. She was expecting to wake up, go to the airport, and somehow slip away to start her new life. Instead, she was going to discover that her old life had some fight left in it. And by the time I was done, everyone was going to know exactly what kind of person she really was. Saturday morning came too soon and not soon enough. I'd been awake since 5, lying in bed and going over my plan one more time. Melissa's alarm went off at 6, and she bounded out of bed with more energy than I'd seen from her in months. "Big day," she said, already heading for the shower. "I can't wait." Neither could I. I got Ethan ready while Melissa finished getting dressed. He was practically vibrating with excitement, chattering about all the rides he wanted to go on and whether we'd be able to see fireworks. "Dad, do you think Goofy will remember me from last time?" "I'm sure he will, buddy." Melissa came downstairs looking like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot, not a family vacation. Designer jeans, a silk blouse, and jewelry I didn't recognize. She was glowing in a way that made my chest tight with anger. "Ready?" she asked, checking her phone. "We should leave in about 20 minutes. "Actually," I said, "there's been a change of plans." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Ethan, can you go get your backpack from upstairs? Make sure you have your dinosaur." After he left the room, I turned back to Melissa. "I know about Lance." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. "Jeff, I don't know what you—" "Lance Brennan, Morton's Steakhouse, the Marriott downtown, Miami." I pulled out my phone and showed her one of Lisa's photos. "Should I keep going?" She stared at the image of herself kissing another man, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "How long have you known?" she finally whispered. "Long enough. Long enough to hire a lawyer, document everything, and make some plans of my own." "Jeff, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you were going to take our son to the airport and then abandon him? How you were going to let me stand there trying to figure out why Mommy decided she had somewhere better to be?" Tears started running down her cheeks, ruining her carefully applied makeup. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was going to tell you. When? After you were already in Miami? After Lance proposed with the ring he bought yesterday? She actually gasped. How do you know about the ring? I know everything, Melissa. The question is, what happens next? Ethan came running back downstairs, backpack in hand. I'm ready. Can we go now? I looked at my son, so excited and innocent, and then at my wife, who was still crying silently. Change of plans, buddy. Mom's not feeling well, so it's just going to be you and me. Is Mom okay? Ethan looked worried, and Melissa's face crumpled. She's going to be fine, I said, but she needs to stay home and rest. Melissa opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but I cut her off with a look. We'll talk when I get back, I told her. Don't go anywhere. The drive to Logan Airport was quiet. Ethan fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from excitement, and I used the time to think. Part of me felt guilty for what I was about to do, but a bigger part of me felt like I was finally taking control of my life for the first time in years. At the airport, I parked in long-term parking and woke Ethan up gently. Ready for our adventure? Where's Mom? He looked around the car, confused. Remember? She's not feeling well. It's just us guys this time. He nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. It broke my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. Melissa had done this to him, not me. We made it through security and to our gate with time to spare. That's when I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I called Margaret Pike. It's Jeff Turner. She was planning to leave this morning just like we thought. I have my son with me at the airport. Perfect. That demonstrates abandonment and puts you in the position of the responsible parent. Are you still planning to proceed with filing on Monday? Absolutely. Next, I called Melissa's mother, Patricia. Hi, Pat, it's Jeff. I wanted to let you know that Melissa won't be joining Ethan and me in Florida. She's decided she has other priorities. What do you mean, other priorities? I mean, she's been having an affair for 4 months and was planning to run off to Miami this morning instead of taking our son on vacation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long time. Jeff, that's a very serious accusation. It's not an accusation. I have photos, receipts, and a private investigator's report. Your daughter abandoned her family for a man with a Porsche. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just thought you should know who your daughter really is. Then I called my own mother, my sister, and Sam. Each conversation was brief and to the point. Melissa was cheating, the marriage was over, and I had full custody of Ethan. Jesus, Jeff, Sam said. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm free. By the time our flight boarded, half of our social circle knew that Melissa Turner was an adulteress who had abandoned her child for a weekend in Miami. By the time we landed in Orlando, the other half would know too. But I wasn't done yet. During the flight, while Ethan watched a movie on the seatback screen, I composed a Facebook post. Taking my son on a much-needed father-son trip to Disney World. Sometimes life forces you to reevaluate what's really important. Family, loyalty, and keeping your promises to the people who matter most. Some people understand these values, others don't. Grateful to be raising a boy who will grow up knowing the difference. I attached a photo of Ethan grinning in his airplane seat, then hit post. Within an hour, it had 37 likes and 12 comments, all supportive. You're such a good dad, Jeff. Ethan is lucky to have you. Hope you guys have an amazing time. I knew Melissa would see it. I knew she'd understand exactly what it meant. And I knew this was just the beginning. The plane touched down in Orlando at noon, and Ethan was practically bouncing in his seat. Dad, this is going to be the best trip ever. Yes, I said, watching my phone buzz with notifications as more people liked and commented on my post. I think it is. Melissa had made her choice. She'd chosen Lance Brennan and his money and his promises over her husband and son. Now she was going to live with the consequences of that choice, and everyone was going to know exactly what she'd done. Disney World was magical, just like it was supposed to be. Ethan rode Space Mountain 4 times, met Mickey Mouse, and ate his weight in cotton candy. For 3 days, I almost forgot about the war I'd started back home. But my phone kept reminding me. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails that grew increasingly desperate. Melissa, her mother, her sister, even Lance Brennan himself, all trying to reach me, all wanting to explain or work things out. I ignored them all. The only calls I answered were from Margaret Pike, who had excellent news. "I filed the divorce papers this morning," she said while Ethan was napping in our hotel room. "Citing adultery and abandonment, I also filed for an emergency custody hearing." "How emergency?" "Thursday. The judge was very interested in the circumstances of Mrs. Turner's abandonment of the child." "What about our assets?" "I've frozen the joint accounts and put a hold on any major expenditures. She can't touch the house, the cars, or the savings until this is resolved." I felt a savage satisfaction at that. Melissa was probably discovering right about now that her credit cards weren't working. "There's something else," Margaret continued. "I've been contacted by Lance Brennan's ex-wife. Apparently your situation isn't unique. He has a pattern of pursuing married women and encouraging them to leave their families." "Encouraging them how?" "Promises of financial security, a glamorous lifestyle, trips to exotic locations. Then, once they've burned their bridges, he loses interest and moves on to the next target." I thought about the engagement ring Lisa had mentioned. "What about the ring he bought?" "According to his ex-wife, he's used the same ring to propose to at least 3 different women. He returns it when the relationship ends." Poor Melissa. She thought she was trading up for a better life, but she'd actually just signed up to be Lance Brennan's latest victim. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We flew back to Boston on Tuesday afternoon. Ethan had fallen asleep again, this time clutching a stuffed Mickey Mouse and wearing mouse ears. He'd had the time of his life, and for the first time in months, I felt like I'd been a good father. The house was dark when we got home. Melissa's BMW wasn't in the driveway. "Where's Mom?" Ethan asked as I carried him inside. "I don't know, buddy. Maybe she's still not feeling well." But I did know. She was probably at Lance's apartment, trying to figure out how to salvage the mess she'd made of her life. I put Ethan to bed and then sat down to check the damage on social media. My Disney post had over 200 likes now, and the comments had taken on a distinctly supportive tone. "Jeff, you're handling this with such grace. Melissa doesn't deserve you or Ethan. Some people just don't appreciate what they have." Word had gotten out, just like I'd planned. The story was spreading through our social circle like wildfire. Melissa Turner had abandoned her husband and child for another man. My phone rang around 10 p.m. Melissa. "Jeff, please, we need to talk." "Do we?" "I'm coming home." "No, you're not. I changed the locks." Silence. Then, "You can't keep me out of my own house." "Actually, I can. It's called abandonment. Look it up." "Jeff, please, I made a mistake. I know that now. Lance, he's not who I thought he was." "What happened? Did he dump you already?" Her voice broke. "He said he needed time to think, that maybe we moved too fast." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. Right after he found out you couldn't access our bank accounts anymore?" "It's not about money." "Everything's about money, Melissa. You just never realized you were the one being bought." "I want to see Ethan." "You'll see him at the custody hearing on Thursday. Until then, stay away from my house." I hung up and poured myself a drink. Outside, I could see a car parked across the street, Melissa's BMW. She was sitting out there in the dark, probably crying, probably trying to figure out how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. I closed the blinds and went to bed. Wednesday morning brought more good news from Margaret Pike. Lance Brennan's ex-wife wants to testify at the hearing, she said. She's willing to detail his pattern of behavior and explain how he manipulates married women. Will the judge allow that? It goes to your wife's judgment and decision-making ability. If she fell for a known predator, it raises questions about her fitness as a parent. That afternoon, I picked Ethan up from school. His teacher, Mrs. Peterson, asked to speak with me privately. Ethan seems a little confused about where his mother is, she said carefully. He's been telling the other children that she's sick, but some of the parents have been talking. What kind of talking? About your Facebook posts, about Melissa being seen with another man. Jeff, I don't want to overstep, but if there are going to be changes in Ethan's home situation, the school needs to know. There are going to be changes. I'll have official documentation after Thursday's hearing. She nodded sympathetically. He's a resilient boy, and he clearly adores you. He'll be okay. That evening, Melissa called again. I saw Lance today, she said without preamble. Congratulations. He broke up with me. I'm shocked. Jeff, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you and Ethan, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out. No, we can't. Why not? Because I don't love you anymore. The words surprised me as much as they did her. I hadn't planned to say them, but as soon as they left my mouth, I knew they were true. You don't mean that. I do. I loved the woman I married 10 years ago. But that woman wouldn't have abandoned her child for a weekend with a con artist. That woman wouldn't have spent 4 months lying to my face. That woman is gone, Melissa. You destroyed her. Jeff, I'll see you in court tomorrow. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold. I dropped Ethan off at school with a kiss and a promise that everything was going to be okay, then drove downtown to face my soon-to-be ex-wife in front of a judge. Melissa was already there when I arrived, sitting with a lawyer I didn't recognize. She looked terrible, pale, thin, like she hadn't slept in days. She probably hadn't. Lance Brennan was nowhere to be seen. The hearing was swift and brutal. Margaret Pike presented the evidence methodically. The private investigator's photos, the credit card statements, the documentation of Melissa's planned abandonment. Then Lance's ex-wife testified. He targets married women specifically, she said. He likes the challenge of breaking up families. He promises them a new life, encourages them to leave their husbands, and then discards them once they've destroyed their marriages. Melissa's lawyer tried to object, but the judge allowed the testimony. Mrs. Turner, the judge said finally, you abandoned your child to pursue an extramarital relationship with a man who has a documented pattern of predatory behavior. This demonstrates profoundly poor judgment and a disregard for your son's emotional well-being. Your Honor, I made a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions that culminated in child abandonment. Mr. Turner will retain full physical and legal custody. You'll have supervised visitation rights pending a psychological evaluation. Melissa started crying. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off. As we left the courthouse, she tried to approach me one last time. Jeff, please, I'll do anything. I'll sign a postnup, give up my rights to the house, whatever you want. Just let me come home. I looked at this woman who had shared my bed for 10 years, who had given birth to my son, who had once been the center of my universe. Go home, Melissa. Oh, wait, you don't have one anymore. I walked away and didn't look back. That evening, I picked Ethan up from school and took him out for pizza. Dad, some kids at school said Mom moved away. Is that true? I chose my words carefully. Mom made some choices that hurt our family. She's going to be living somewhere else for a while. Because she was sick? In a way, yes. He thought about this while he ate his pizza. Finally, he said, Are you sad? A little. But mostly I'm happy that I get to spend more time with you. He smiled, and I realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't pretending to be okay. I actually was okay. Better than okay, actually. I was free. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Melissa got supervised visitation every other weekend and had to pay child support. The house, the savings, and most of our assets stayed with me. Lance Brennan had moved on to his next target within a month of dumping Melissa. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office and living in a studio apartment across town. I heard through mutual friends that she'd tried to reconcile with her family, but her mother and sister were still furious about the embarrassment she'd caused. The story of her affair and abandonment had spread through our entire social circle, and most people had taken my side. Ethan was thriving. His grades were up, he'd made new friends, and he seemed happier and more relaxed than he'd been in years. We went camping, built model airplanes, and watched movies without the constant tension that had defined our house for so long. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with women who appreciated a man who showed up when he said he would. One evening, as I was tucking Ethan into bed, he asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Dad, are you glad Mom left?" I thought about lying, about giving him some sanitized version of the truth. But Ethan was 8 now, and he deserved honesty. "I'm glad we found out who she really was before she could hurt us any more than she already had." He nodded solemnly. "I think she was pretending to be our mom for a long time." "Yeah, buddy, I think you're right. But you're not pretending, are you?" "Never. I will always be your dad, no matter what." He smiled and closed his eyes. "Good. I like our family better now." So did I. Melissa had thought she was trading up when she chose Lance Brennan over her family. Instead, she'd traded everything: her home, her son, her reputation, her future, for a few months with a con artist who discarded her the moment she became inconvenient. Meanwhile, I'd discovered that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I'd fought for my son, and won. I'd exposed the truth and survived the aftermath. I'd built a new life from the ashes of the old one. Some people might say I was too harsh, too vindictive in my revenge. But those people never had to explain to a 7-year-old why Mommy chose a stranger over her own family. Melissa made her choice. I just made sure she lived with the consequences. And in the end, that made all the difference.